It's really, really important to understand the fundamentals of closing. And those fundamentals aren't some slick line that you can put on there and people, it's kind of like rubbing the genie, rubbing the lamp and the genie pops out. It doesn't work that way. Damien Andrews, NextGen Sales, and the terrifying word of closing. I need to get that out, need to relax, because closing, yeah, it's something that so many people dread in sales, and it really doesn't need to be that way. When you're thinking about closing, a lot of times people, they get there and it's kind of like all this tension creeps in. They'll be doing this wonderful presentation. A friend of mine was at a presentation recently, talked about it and said it was so wonderful. And then at the end, they kind of messed it up and got really tense about the closing. And this is where it's really, really important to understand the fundamentals of closing. And those fundamentals aren't some slick line that you can put on there and people, it's kind of like rubbing the genie, rubbing the lamp and the genie pops out. It doesn't work that way. Closing the sale comes back to the very beginning, where you're understanding their position and then you're allowing them to close themselves. So you're putting it forward in a way that allows them to go, yeah, actually, we can do that. That would be a great idea. And you do that, start from the very beginning. I want to cover off a couple of key points here, key skills that are really, really important. And this is probably where introverts are better at it than extroverts. And extroverts tend to talk a lot and don't listen a lot. And the first point I'm going to talk about here is active listening. It is the number one key important thing to do with sales is active listening. Be asking questions, care about what they want, what they need, what their problem is. You have to understand that problem, and the problem is not on the surface thing that comes up. There's a lot more detail to that, and that's where active listening is not just listening to the words. It's listening to what's going on behind the words. What's going on with their body language. A lot of times when they might say something, especially if you haven't built rapport yet, they could be saying some stuff. You notice there's a lot of tension in the body. Well, they're probably just covering off something to throw you off because they just don't trust you yet. And that's where that active listening is really important, because before you even get to closing, just don't go to close unless you've built that relationship. And that's the active listening part. That's the first part of that. And the second part is building rapport. We've got a number of videos on how to build rapport, but essentially the best and easiest way to build rapport is, again, active listening and asking questions. Care about the other person. Be interested in them. Be interested in their problem. That's what you're there to solve. If they don't have a problem, then you don't want to be doing a deal. You don't want to be pushing a deal. You want to find out and build that relationship, because what you do is you ask them, oh, is there anyone else that you might know of that can help? And that's a whole referral process. Again, pretty simple. Then, okay, we're dealing with objections. That's the next step. So active listening, you really need to be listening a lot. Building rapport, again, asking questions, be genuinely interested in the person and their problem. And then we're addressing objections. So there might be a number of reasons for that. And one of them might be they don't have a genuine need. And if they don't, then you don't want to push the sale, you don't want to force the sale. They're just going to create, and that's where your active listening comes in. You notice there's tension there. Time to pull back and ask for a referral. And then from that perspective, find out. That's, again, coming back to the active listening. This is how you handle objections. Ask questions. So, okay, tell me more about that. I need to understand what's going on. I don't quite get it. And having those list of questions, and I've got another video which lists out a whole bunch of questions that you can ask in handling objections. And then, you can then do what's called trial closes. And this is building that relationship to find out, have you addressed the objections well enough? So that's where you're asking, well, would this work for you in this way? What would make it work in this area? How does this solve your problem? Those kind of things. Obviously, you'd be a little bit specific depending on your circumstance, but they're general frameworks of the questions that you ask. So your trial closing, is there anything else more that you need to uncover to find out whether this deal is going to work? The other thing you can do, and they talk about not so much, you probably need to build this in earlier, but not near the end of closing. But some social proof. Data works better. Social proof, anyone can have social proof and go, oh, look here, look at all my referrals. Yeah, who's going to put some bad referrals up? But data works better, showing here this is how people perform. Here's the data to support that people that have this solution perform better, or they're not missing out, which is even stronger. The motivation to not miss out has a stronger psychological motivation because people want to be part of the group for survival. It's ingrained in us for many, many years. And people talk about, talk positive. Yeah, it doesn't sell. If you, from that perspective, what actually generates that motivation is people feeling that they're going to miss out, they're going to fall behind. People don't want to be outside the pack. FOMO is a real thing. The other thing that you need to do, and this comes back to your own personal development, might be the way of putting it, but really it's about confidence. Do you actually believe that this person, the person that you're selling to, is going to benefit from that? And how much you believe that is really how willing that you are. Because if you really believe that their life is going to be better off with this, that should give you a tremendous amount of confidence to actually push this, to actually convince them and show, hey, look, what am I not missing? What am I not getting? Because from the way I see it, I use it, hopefully use your own products and services. Because then you actually fully understand their benefit. But from that perspective, you can say, well, I do, this is how I use this. This is the benefit it has to my life. This is what I'm not missing out on because I'm using this. And from that, you can speak a lot more confidently about, that the product or service you're offering, and to influence that sale as well. And part of that confluence is that influence, because you're confident about it, because you can talk so highly about it, because you have that experience and you're confident, they're going to pick up on that. So that's part of that closing the sale. And the final point is, and this is where a lot of people don't do it, they get all that way and they don't ask for the sale. You need to ask for the sale. You do the trial ask and say, is there anything else that we need to discuss before we finalize this? And a lot of times, if you word it well and you've had that relationship, a lot of times they will say, yeah, okay, we're ready to go with this. You don't have to force it. And that's where you want to get to. You want to structure that conversation following those principles. You're actively listening, building rapport, addressing the objections, trial closes, create a little bit of urgency, which is, again, that whole missing out component. Have some data that supports why people who have this don't miss out. Again, focusing on the don't missing out component. Big sales point. People don't like to miss out. Be confident if you believe in it, and then ask for the sale. But at that point, by the time you've got to that point, it's no longer a case of you need to sort of jump to asking for the sale. And that's where that uncomfortableness comes from. Because if you're getting to that point, and if you're in that situation where you're feeling, oh, this is uncomfortable to ask for the sale, there's two components to consider. One, are you confident enough in your own belief that in your product or service? And if you are, the second one, if you're starting to feel that tension there, it's you haven't gone through those steps well enough to get to the point where they trust that you're going to deliver, or they have a genuine need. That's the other component. Maybe they don't have a genuine need. So follow that process. Closing is very easy when you follow that process, when you've built that relationship, when you've overcome all the objections, all the possible reasons as to why they can't do that. And those things are legitimate. When you actually find out what that is, and then you go, okay, well, this is a solution. When I say it's legitimate from the perspective of in their mind. If they have a genuine need for it, then any objections are things that can be worked around. And that's where that active listening comes in. So again, if you're feeling that tension at the end of closing, stop, pause, relax, take the time, go back, understand the situation, and you just keep looping around and find out. It might be a case, and sometimes that happens. I've had it happen a number of times where the person didn't have a genuine need. And through the process, we identified that they didn't. And it was okay, I understand that. That's no problem. Do you have anybody else that might benefit from this? And more often than not, I'd get referrals. So again, ask for the sale, ask for referrals. And then after that, don't leave them hanging. This is even though it's not closing as such, it is part of that sales process is follow up, stay in contact, build that relationship. If they bought from you once before, they will probably buy again, depending on the products or services. But in most cases, even if it's a long lead time item, those things come around again. So you just build that relationship. Real estate agents do that very well. Good real estate agents do that very well. They know that people will, buy another house at some point. That happens. So build that relationship uh, so that you can then close. And that's what closing really is about. It's not about you get to the point and you go, okay, now I've got to close. It's you've done all the steps, and then closing just becomes seamless and easy to do. This is Damien Andrews for NextGen Sales.